Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Ask Me Anything for the CrossFit Linchpin private track, the Facebook group. Today is September 9th, 2021. As always, great questions. Members submit questions. All the other members upvote them, and we answer the most popular ones live each week. So here we go. First one, and a good one, is from Levi A. Levi says, do you adjust programming on results specific to the Linchpin community? For instance, if the majority of Linchpin athletes miss a more likely time, do you add additional days of that stimulus to get us better at GPP? And do you use all of the Beyond the Whiteboard results or only track Linchpin athletes? Good question. There's a couple parts to that. Well, let's just dive right in. So, let's see. I got my notes here. Do you adjust the programming as a result of the Linchpin community? What if a lot of people miss the more likely time, etc., etc.? So, luckily, that happens sure, some folks will miss the more likely time every now and then. A smattering of people missing the more likely time is literally nothing to raise an eyebrow about. If this huge tidal wave, tsunami of people wildly miss the more likely time, that would be of profound interest and something to look into and see what the heck happened there. I can say with all honesty and confidence that doesn't occur. So luckily, that's not really something that has to be worried about that frequently at all. And what's more interesting, I find anyway, with regards to the more likely time and the super fitness robot time, is, they used to not be part of the Linchpin private track. There wasn't goal times. That the goal times got added, I don't know, a year ago, 2 years ago, something like that. But initially when the private track launched, there were no goal times. And I wrestled with whether or not to add them for quite some time. Because people are crazy. And because people tend to worry about things that they shouldn't worry about, stress out about things that they shouldn't stress out about, and now they are spending their time inefficiently instead of just doing the work. And as soon as you write down goal times, no matter how well-intentioned that they are, some people, and Levi, I'm not saying this is you, by the way, this is why I struggled to even add them in the first place. Some people are going to put, I almost want to say, far too much importance on them, and then base a lot of their success or potential failure on how their workout went relating to the goal times. And I knew that some people are wired like that, and that was one of the things that gave me pause as to whether or not I should even add them. Because when I first started CrossFit, there were no goal times, right? I mean, they're just, you kind of had an idea that a shorter workout was a shorter workout and a longer workout was a longer workout. And everybody was A-okay without ever knowing a goal time. When Fran was posted, 21:59 thrusters and pull-ups, you could just look at it and tell that it was generally a shorter workout than the filthy 50s or Murph. And so you kind of knew, well, today's going to be a shorter day, and Murph and the filthy 50s, or Cindy, which is a 20-minute rep, that's going to be a longer day, and that's okay. And if you couldn't do Fran, which I certainly could not when I first started, 95-pound thrusters, are you kidding me? It wasn't overly complicated. You just said, well, I can't do 95-pound thrusters, so I'm going to go lighter. And I'll keep going lighter, and eventually I'll be able to use a little bit more weight, and eventually I'll be able to break it up less, and eventually I'll be able to do Fran. And it literally was that simple. And the filthy 50s. I mean, at the end, those 50 double-unders, I'm sure if there were goal times associated with the filthy 50s, I would not have met any of the goal times. Certainly not the super fitness robot, I'm here to tell you that. But even the more likely time, because I was a slow learner at double-unders. I mean, the rest of the workout's hard as is. But then, whatever the more likely time was, I mean, I would spend, this is not an exaggeration, I was so pig-headed and stubborn, I would finish the, second to last exercise of the filthy 50s be left with 50 double unders, and those 50 double unders would take me at least 10 minutes to do. At least 10 minutes. So there's no way, if I went into like Beyond the Whiteboard, saw the historical data on the Filthy 50s, establish some reasonable goal times, I would not meet the goal time for sure. So does that mean the Filthy 50s didn't benefit me? It wasn't wonderful. I didn't get what I should have got out of it that day. I didn't improve my fitness. I wasn't advancing forward. It doesn't mean any of those things. The opposite could also potentially be true. You could be like, well, should you have spent 10 minutes whipping yourself with the rope? Could you have modified it in some way, shape, or form? Sure. And here's the crazy thing that I think some people struggle with. That also would have been fine. It's not that one was totally right and one was totally wrong. And I know that bothers some people intensely because they want it to be a mathematical 2 + 2 = 4. This is the right way to do it. That is the wrong way to do it. Now my life is in order. Everything's great. It's not entirely that simple. That is why programming is undoubtedly, we say all the time in CrossFit, part science and part art, for sure. The science aspect, understanding the human body, you have to be technically proficient in that, beyond a shadow of a doubt. If you're just winging it, you're doing everybody a disservice. But then the other part of that is the art aspect of just, you can't just templatize and say, well, every third day we do this, and every fourth day we do this, and everyone's going to march in lockstep like a bunch of robots, and I just print out this template every week and every month, and everything goes well. Human beings are a moving target, and that doesn't work well, and that's where the art aspect comes in. And then the other aspect, I would also say, is that to be a programmer or a coach or a leader of a community, you also almost have to be like a part-time psychologist or psychiatrist as well. Talk folks off the ledge and keep everybody going in the right direction and make sure they're not wildly spinning themselves out of control or worrying about things that aren't probably as big of a worry as they may be made out to be in some people's minds. So, with regards to the goal times, I struggled as to whether or not I should even add them. Initially, I eventually obviously decided to. But then what I want people to realize is the goal times, they're soft boundaries, okay? They're a nice, inflatable, fluffy, soft, friendly boundary that if you bump into it, you're great. No worries about it. They're not a rigid concrete wall covered in barbed wire with like a row of landmines before it, that if you bump into or exceed the more likely time that you have, blown up, you're dead, mission failure, that kind of stuff. That's not it. It's a soft boundary, not a hard boundary. And don't get me wrong, the goal times, that's the reason that I added them. For all the potential human psychology pitfalls that they could create, they are, when viewed calmly and rationally, a wonderful, helpful, useful metric that can help guide what you do in the gym. That's all. That's it. That's their entire point right there. For example, they're a useful metric for, if we're doing Cindy, and I say, you shouldn't get 5 rounds of Cindy in 20 minutes. If you did that, you didn't scale or modify appropriately. So giving a goal for that workout, that makes a lot of sense. Conversely, if you got 32 rounds of Cindy, that's also suspect. You probably didn't make it hard enough. You didn't scale or modify it appropriately for your needs in that direction either. Super fitness robot and the more likely times or goals, if we're doing DT shouldn't take you 4 minutes. You probably scaled it too much and didn't kind of meet the intended stimulus. Should have had a bit more weight on the bar. It should have been a bit more challenging. Maybe you knocked down the reps too much. The goal times are useful for something like that. Conversely, DT shouldn't take you 19 minutes either. You didn't scale it enough. You should have knocked it down more. So they're these soft, they absolutely have value. They absolutely can help improve yourself, your knowledge, your workouts. But I don't want people to view them as a rigid, unyielding box. That if you happen to step outside of that, oh no, what went wrong? Quite frankly, the goal times, the overwhelming majority of the time, are really, really accurate, profoundly accurate, the overwhelming majority of the time. Am I going to say every single time? No, that would be ridiculous. The overwhelming majority of the time. That if the more likely thing that does happen is if a group of folks finish, let's say, significantly outside the more likely time, probably wasn't anything wrong with the more likely time. That group of individuals probably should have scaled or modified the workout a bit more than they chose to. That's all. And all that happens in those cases, that's also why in the Beyond the Whiteboard app, you've got that nice section for notes. Just write yourself a note as to what you did, how it went. Do you feel in hindsight now that that was a good decision? Could you have made a better decision? And all of that relates to improving your knowledge and sophistication base when it comes to making these decisions in the gym. And here's the other interesting thing. It's not like, let's say that you didn't scale DT appropriately. The DT took you 20 minutes, okay? It's not like what you learned in doing a 20-minute DT that you should have scaled, or maybe it was maybe the deads were just fine and the hang power cleans were just fine, but it was the jerks. The jerks were a life-ending experience, super hard. You had to break them up incredibly. That's what got you. Well, it's not like when you write down those notes in DT, that knowledge base is not now limited to DT. It's not only going to help you the next time the DT comes up. The fact that there was a deadlift and a hang power clean and a shoulder overhead in that movement at whatever loading you chose to use improves your knowledge base that will apply to other workouts as well. And that's why each individual workout, it has this synergistic effect that, again, your knowledge base just improves significantly and significantly and significantly. And then life gets better inside the gym. So, Levi, you've got me off track. How dare you? You know how susceptible I am to rabbit holes. I had notes. I'm so far off the notes, it's unbelievable. Because something else popped into my head. So let's see. And super fitness robot times, and the more likely times, those are also helpful on like an interval day. That helps keep you in check, that if we are looking for, in general, a shorter time domain, higher intensity day, and the scaling should meet those needs. Maybe the super fitness robot time is 3 minutes or less. The more likely time is 4 minutes or less. And you scaled or modified them in a way that you came in at 4:30 every time. That day is not a failure. That's still, relatively speaking to a bunch of other days, a shorter time domain, higher intensity day. Great. You're on the path to fitness. Life's great. And again, just learn from that experience and you will become a sharper and a sharper athlete and individual after every single one of those data points. Let's see. And what shapes all this stuff, and do I pay attention to what everyone's doing? I mean, beyond a shadow of a doubt. But I don't pay attention to what they're doing in a casual, rational way to make sure that we're going where we should go as a community. I pay attention to how everyone's doing like an obsessive lunatic is probably a better way to say it. Like just a madman. I mean, this is programming and guiding the Linchpin community and trying to help everybody else, trying to help people live a healthier, better life. I mean, not to be over the top, but I mean, this is what I'm supposed to be doing on planet Earth. This is my life's purpose, to help everybody out, and I tremendously adore it. And it's not only looking at everyone's results each day on either social media or the Facebook group or the data through Beyond the Whiteboard for Linchpin, and also historical data on any particular workout that we are doing on Linchpin. All of that comes into play. But even that doesn't tell the whole tale as to what's guiding decisions, shaping decisions, massaging decisions to constantly make and improve everything. It's not just that, but it's, everything that I've done in CrossFit for the last 16 years of working or focusing in about every facet of the community and organization as you could potentially think of. All of that, all the level 1 seminars, all the textbooks read, all the questions answered, all the interviews, all of that comes into play. So it's not just as simple as you scan the data and go, oh yeah, that makes sense. There's a whole bunch of nuance in there that, as far as I'm concerned, takes things from good to great, is what I would say, quite frankly. And it never stops. And this is not a side hustle while I run 2 or 3 other businesses. This is it. This is my maniacal 24 hours a day, 365 days a year focus. So, yeah, I look at things, you could say. And, even like later on today, I've got to do a very not random podcast with Adrian Bosman, who I believe is one of the smartest people walking the earth with regards to CrossFit. And so I feel very fortunate and blessed that, some of the other things that I do are 100% connected to improving a knowledge base on a continual, non-stop basis that luckily everybody in Linchpin can benefit from. So yeah. Okay. Let's see. Great. Levi, good question. Next question is interesting. This one is interesting. This is from Kristen S. Here we go. Kristen says, we have a gym owner who fell off with his abilities to write good programming, and we, the coaches, have since convinced him to begin buying Linchpin programming for the gym since about April. In the beginning, the programming was amazing, but it eventually started to not make sense to me, and I wasn't sure why. So what Kristen did is she went ahead and got herself an individual subscription to the Linchpin private track. Obviously, she's now in the community and a member and posting this question that I'm reading. So I purchased your program as an individual to see what was being modified, and it's alarmingly different. How would you address keeping the programmers or the owner's hands out of the cookie jar so that we can get back to solid programming for the gym? The modifications he's doing are not serving us for the better. So, the gym that Kristen is a coach at, they weren't happy with the programming. Coaches convinced the owner to purchase the Linchpin track for gym owners. Everything's going great. Then all of a sudden something makes Kristen raise an eyebrow after a couple months if things don't seem to be humming along as they were. So she purchases the individual private track, is now a member, and sees, behind the curtain and goes, the gym owner's making all kinds of wacky modifications. What do I do? This is an interesting question. And then somebody else responded to her post and said, how much, personal tweaking or modifications is this guy doing? And she wrote down, he's shortening the warm-ups because he doesn't feel people will buy in to doing a good warm-up. He makes up a totally different workout at least once a week, adds in strength cycles that are not complementary to the programming or the community, never does a cool down, and almost never adds accessory work. Okay, so, yeah, there's a couple different directions we could go with this. It's an interesting question. The shorter warm-ups, let's just start with some of the bullet points that you said. The shorter warm-ups, not necessarily the end of the world, okay? I even say on the rest days, on the rest day post on the private track, there's a bit of a discussion about warm-ups, and it says, those warm-ups that are put there are phenomenal, wonderful, all-encompassing, cover you head to toe. and they will serve you well for the rest of your life. However, if you happen to see that something treats you a little bit better in a warm-up and you want to modify it in one way, shape, or form, you should by all means feel free to do that. Maybe, we're going below parallel and you found this particular thing that helps you get loose below parallel more than somebody else. Well, you should absolutely feel free to put that in, etc., etc. And, when I go out in the garage and work out with my wife, let's say there's 4 rounds not for time in the warm-up that we're going to do. Well, it also depends upon the individual as well. I might actually need all 4 rounds to feel good, to feel loose, to feel warmed up. My wife traditionally shortens the warm-ups regularly because she might do 3 out of the 4 rounds and she feels perfectly and utterly warmed up and ready to go. And so, can you hear my baby screaming in the background? My angel of a wife is out there taking care of the child. The child's furious. So anyway, that's my baby saying hello to everybody if you can hear her. So I would love for them to get, people buying into the warm-up. I think that in general is a concern for a lot of people. And so I don't see that changing anytime soon. Hopefully you can educate your clients a little bit as to why the warm-up is so darn important. And then, modify as needed. So that's no drama there. Making up a workout once a week, that could be okay or it could not be okay. It largely depends upon the individual skills of the person doing that and how that new workout that somebody created fits beautifully or does not fit beautifully in whatever came before it and after it. And obviously, based upon Kristen's question, it sounds like that's not going well. So that saddens me. That's probably not going to benefit anybody, so I'm sorry to hear that. The next point was adds in strength cycles that are not complementary. I mean, that's the classic thing, which we've done dedicated podcast to that about that as well, right? That's want versus need. Most people do not, I know that this will blow their mind to hear it, they do not need extra lifting. They do not. However, a lot of people want it and they enjoy it. So again, it's doesn't make it right or wrong. It's people want it and they enjoy it. Well, then there's benefit there for sure. But do most people need it? Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, if you truly tested people's strength, their body weight, their gymnastics ability, strict pull-ups, L-sits, things like that, their 800-meter run time, their mile run time, their 5K run time, you would see that, again, we've said this before, they need work in their weightlifting, they need work in their body weight movements, they need work on their engine. Yet everybody only seems to add in extra lifting. You see this extra lifting before class. Nobody does extra 800-meter runs before class. Nobody does extra strict pull-ups or L-sits before class, even though those areas are equally needed, if not more so than the weightlifting. But here's the deal. They're not as popular. It's really easy to get people to pull some heavy deads before class. Nobody wants to show up to do 800-meter repeats. So again, it comes back down to want versus need. And that is one of the interesting things that separates Linchpin, right? I've said this from the beginning. We're going to do what is effective, not what's popular. And for those people that have the knowledge base, the discipline, and the dedication, and they understand true long-term health and fitness, we shall march together into the promised land, because you will be part of that wonderful group of people that's actually doing what is needed, not just what you want. There's a big difference between that. But I get it. Gym owner, you got to keep the doors open. You've got to keep people coming in, not only to help them out, ideally, physically and mentally, but you got to pay your lease, you got to pay your rent, you got to pay your trainers. And so you can really wrestle with this, giving people what they want versus what they need. And hey, man, they just love to do an unnecessary lifting session every day. They love it. Keeps the classes full, keeps the parking lot full, keeps the bills paid. I get that. It's a tough position to be in. I don't envy that position. And again, a lot of it comes down to what's not popular, which is educating the community as to what is truly going to drive the needle forward for their fitness, but that also takes time. Again, we're doing these Linchpin conversations. These things can be 30, 45 minutes, an hour. We do them regularly. Most gym owners can't get their people, hey, come in an hour early before we even start class, and I'm going to just dive into the methodology with you and why we do what we do, and then you'll understand why this extra bit of lifting isn't needed before class. Most people don't have time or desire to do that, and so you've got a bunch of people showing up to class that just like to work out, and the owner feels some pressure to kind of do what's just going to be popular. It's a crappy position to be in. A crappy position to be in. I don't envy it. So that's a tough one right there. Never does a cool down. Yikes. I think somebody's doing themselves a disservice right there. Almost never adds in accessory work. I actually don't have an issue with that. The accessory work, it truly is optional. It really, really is. You do not have to do a single piece of accessory work for your entire time on the planet, and you'll be okay as long as you intelligently scale the workout. There you go. And if we had a certain period of time in a class, let's say 10 to 15 minutes, I would much rather use that time before the workout to walk around and give wonderful, beautiful one-on-one coaching, improvement, technique work before the workout than not have that, warm up, do the workout, and then have 15 minutes at the end for accessory work. I would make that swap 10 times out of 10. Get rid of the accessory work, add 15 minutes of wonderful technique work and one-on-one coaching that make everybody better. Now, if you've got time and you can do both, that's great, but that's usually not the case in classes. Time is precious. So, okay, now kind of circling back to what's potentially the toughest part of this, of Kristen's question, is obviously she wants to know how the coaches can approach the owner and let the owner know, hey, the coaches don't think you're doing the community here any service, a great service. You need to stop doing what you're doing. Let's just follow the programming that you're paying for. That's a discussion. That topic can be encapsulated in how do you have a difficult conversation with a human being? That's a challenge right there. That's a challenge because I communicate messages for a living, so I think a lot about these things. And I truly am a believer that you can say just about anything to anyone. It just depends how you do it. In my personal opinion, I don't think a lot of people are good communicators. Sorry, I don't. I think a lot of us need work on our communication skills. A lot of communication that I overhear is largely confrontational and adversarial and attacking, and that immediately puts the other party on the defensive, and they get nowhere. Everyone just digs in their heels. Both parties are just trying to convince the other party why they're wrong. No one responds well to that. Tensions increase, and at the end of the conversation, the gap between the two parties is now probably bigger than ever because people just don't respond well to that. Largely it's due to ego issues, lack of humility issues, and most people don't respond well when they realize that the conversation's leading to the point of you are making an error. What you are doing is wrong. A lot of us think you should change your behavior. Most people don't respond well to that unless they're really solid, really mature, really well-grounded. But that's a rare individual. So if you are going to broach this with them, Kristen, really think it out well. The timing has to be right. And I would come at it from a place of trying to help the owner understand. You should try to have the conversation where your goal is not so much to change the owner's mind, but try to ask the owner questions to ask the owner, hey, help me understand why you're changing some of the programming. So that's different than saying, we don't think you should change the programming. We think you're hurting the community. We think these things are stupid. That's going to go in a different direction than you saying, hey, we've noticed that, sometimes the warm-ups get changed a little bit. You're adding in this thing here. You kind of modify this thing on a regular basis. Just out of curiosity, could you just help me understand, since I'm a coach here, I want to understand what we're doing. Could you help me understand why you're doing that? Because if I understand why you're doing it, it will help me be a better trainer for our clients. Now, a question worded like that, I would hope would be well received. It's not confrontational. You're asking for the other person to tell you the reasons. You're genuinely curious, and you're saying, I want to help the community. Now, hopefully that opens the door to a nice little discussion, which is people going back and forth, and then at the end, or sometime during the conversation, you can intelligently and with the correct verbiage sprinkle in your points as to why maybe you see things in a different light. And there's some different wording there as well. So you're not going to sprinkle in things as to why you think he's wrong. It's as to why you potentially see things a bit differently. Or, hey, I see what you're saying. I understand from your perspective why you said you changed or modified this. Have you considered looking at it from this direction? And so now you're asking them a question. You're not saying you should look at it from this different direction. You're saying, have you considered looking at it from this direction? And then you're having an entirely different discussion with the individual. So I have a lot of thoughts on this. We could talk a very long time about this because I do think quite often about effective communication and ineffective communication, and specifically when the topics are a bit sticky. So, Kristen, I wish you luck with that. It's a fascinating one. Okay, I've gone longer than I thought that I would, so I may have to table one or two of these for a future show. But I'll cover one more topic here. And the next question is from Eric J. Can you hear my baby again? We're still dealing with the colic or the reflux. I mean, she is a loud, wonderful baby. I love her. Don't get me wrong, but she is a hand grenade. Okay. Eric J., what's your vision of the future of CrossFit Health? Quite honestly, I'm not quite sure what their plan is. Just because I'm not sure. I can tell you what I hope that it is. I hope that CrossFit Health continues to get more doctors and medical personnel in general, nurses, you name it, through level ones. I think that's a very good thing. Medical personnel are phenomenal at what they do with regards to what's truly entailed with functional movements, a healthy lifestyle, nutrition. It's shocking how many medical professionals fall short in that area, but it's not what they're trained in. So you can't really, a lot of people think that they're trained in it, but quite frankly they're not. And so it's not really their fault. So the more medical personnel I would like to see, get through a level one, I think that benefits the world in general. Another thing I would say is the motto, if that's what you want to call it, or catchphrase or whatever, of CrossFit Health used to be, and I'm not sure if it still is, but it was, let's start with the truth. That's what it was. And I really like that. And I truly hope that CrossFit Health sticks with that, because as I just sit back and see what's happening in the internet and social media and all kinds of stuff, I'm here to tell you, almost more so than ever before, and this is only going to get worse, you are being bombarded with gadgets, technology, different tests that you can have done to your body and whatnot that are just smoke and mirrors, garbage, junk science, not anywhere near as effective as the people who own these companies would have you believe, and they are all looking just to reach into your wallet and get you to swipe your Visa card. That's what they're looking for. It's the opposite of the truth. So when CrossFit Health says, let's start with the truth, I hope they continue to be an entity that sheds light on a lot of the junk science. And it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be an uphill battle, because a lot of these gadgets and technology and tests, they've got really great marketing and really fancy advertising and big name sponsored athletes that endorse them. Of course they endorse them, they're getting paid by them. And you know what? And these are all things that can be monetized. Again, they're swiping the Visa card. And sadly, the general population falls for it every single day. I'm constantly shocked at what people buy into just because an organization or an athlete or somebody well known with a lot of followers, whatever, says they use it or do it. They're being compensated. They're being compensated. Of course they say they're doing it. And there's more of this junk out there right now than there ever has been, and it will only increase. It's only going to increase. And so I truly hope that CrossFit and CrossFit Health sticks to the roots of only being concerned with the truth. Not junk science, not what can be monetized, the actual effective truth. And I'm here to tell you, regardless of what anybody else does, we will continue to do that at CrossFit Linchpin. That model, like I said before, of doing what's effective. I don't care what's popular. I don't care what's getting a lot of media attention, unless it actually works. Then I care very much. But just because it has wonderful advertising, flashy graphics and videos, and they've got a compelling story that you get behind, and look at this athlete, and whoop-de-doo. I'm sorry, that's just a smoke and mirrors marketing campaign that's been around forever. We will continue to be concerned with the truth. It is what it is. So, that's what I hope is the future of CrossFit Health. Stick with that phrase, that unrelenting. Let's start with the truth. Period, end of story. Okay, let's do a couple Linchpin shoutouts. First one, this is very cool. From Karin. Karin S. says, well, look at that. They could not run 200 meters a year ago. Think about that. Could not run 200 meters a year ago. Today, did a 5K in under 40 minutes. So it went from 1 year ago, not being able to run 200 meters, to 1 year later being able to run 5,000 meters. That's incredible. That's mind-blowing. And that actually, to some degree, relates back to Levi's first question, because it took Karin 40 minutes to run that 5K. I guarantee that was outside the more likely time. Guarantee it. I can tell you because I looked it back up. We had a super fitness robot time, and the more likely time for women on a 5K run was just around 32 minutes. Took her 40. Okay? You could make an argument. Should she have run less? Should she have stopped running at 32 minutes? Potentially, but that's why all of these things are not rigid, and that's why you can't just be concerned with what benefits the human body, but what also benefits the mind and the spirit and the attitude of the athlete. And if those are equally important. And so the mental win, the huge mental win of her running a 5K, even though she went 8 minutes over the more likely time, I would never have told her to do otherwise. That was a fantastic call, and I'm glad that she disregarded the more likely time, because that mental victory for her, you can't even do it justice describing it. So again, that's why everything is not a beautiful, simple, very easy, templatized math problem. There's a human psychology side to everything that we're doing here as well, and it's a very, very deeply important aspect of what we're doing. Now, had that taken her 2 hours, yeah, I would have preferred to have her, ratchet that down. Okay, next one we have. This one's from Julie T. And I entitled this, Life Has No Respect for Your Fitness Goals. And so here's what she has to say. Another page from Life Has No Respect for Your Fitness Goals. I had to make an unplanned trip to Canada last week for a family emergency. I drove, loaded the car with some stress relief equipment. The gym in my mom's condo is still closed, so I found a quiet corner of a parking lot and got out early each morning to get a much-needed endorphin dose before facing some very tough days. Very grateful for the limited equipment option, which is the dumbbell option, and for a CrossFitting sister who lives nearby. We did some chippers. The CrossFit Linchpin posts here in the Facebook group and on Instagram are the only bits of social media I looked at this week, and I'm leaning towards making that a fairly permanent thing. This is a lovely community to be a part of when things are good, and an even better one to find inspiration when things are challenging. I appreciate you all every day, but probably never more than this week. Again, the power of community. And finally, this one's from Joe P., entitled Scaling is Cool. The workout was Barbara, which is basically body weight, gymnastics, interval work, high volume, and nasty workout. Joe says, I never would have thought to scale Barbara had coach not strongly recommended it. It was a great decision. And then he talks how he modified his entire week and how it was a very good thing. On Friday, I scaled it and did it not for time, the workout. On Saturday, I did it prescribed but didn't run the clock. Today, I scaled. Tomorrow, I plan on scaling and not running the clock. All of these decisions would have been unfathomable 2 years ago, but now I understand they are absolutely necessary for personal growth. So again, almost relating back to Levi's question as well. Good to know the goal times and whatnot, but that individual knowledge base that improves as to when you should scale, how you should scale, and to what degree, that just takes time to develop for each person. And when you do, life is going to become beautiful. Things are going to be great. So that's it. Thanks for being awesome. I hope everybody has a wonderful day, and we'll talk later.